Hi everyone, I'm Austin,
I'm Brennan.
And I'm Jessica.
and we are the co-founders of SLEKE. We have a special guest with us today, our first guest on Founders Files. Would you like to do a little brief introduction?
Sure. I'm Jessica Halsey. I am a program manager at Generator, which is a venture capital firm and startup accelerator. And I've been doing startup work and VC work for the last 2 years.
Awesome. Well, today we just finished the gBETA program, which is a pre-accelerator through gBETA / Generator. And we thought it would be fun to share what is an accelerator, what that means, what are we doing there, what companies you work with, and all the ins and outs. So, would you like to start off? What is an accelerator?
An accelerator is a program that does exactly what's in the name. The goal is to accelerate the company faster than they might be able to do on their own. So sometimes it comes with investment. So the accelerator may put a small investment into the company in exchange for equity. And yeah, basically they're focused on two things. One is growth of the company, whether that be in revenue, users, whatever sort of metrics the startup is interested in, and then also fundraising. So most people join, particularly an investment accelerator, if they're looking at raising VC funds so they can get those rounds closed faster.
And what do you look for in companies when taking options for the accelerator or for gBETA?
Yeah, so I look at three main things. The first one is actually kind of the most important, and that's founders, the team. Yeah. So accelerators are working with really early stage companies, and so they're very high risk, and you're really betting on the team and the founders even more so than you are the great idea or the product. So, however, those are important too. So the other thing that I look at is the market opportunity. Is the market big enough for this to be able to bring on some additional funding from VCs and traction. That's what you hear over and over again. But if the further along they are in proving that product market fit, the less risky of an investment it is. But it doesn't matter like how good your product is or how great the market is, if the founders aren't coachable and aren't passionate about the problem they're solving, then it really doesn't matter how great the product is.
So for the founders part, you'll hear a lot of different perspectives from people ranging from choosing who to mentor all the way up to choosing who to invest in. You just talked about coachability and what was the other one?
Oh gosh, what did I say? Passion for the
Passion.
problem.
Obviously not memory is it's not an important trait. But other than those two, how do you discern what is a good trait and what is a trait to be avoided when you're evaluating founders?
Well, I think what I've learned in raising funds and gaining customers is it's all about building relationships. And so if a founder, maybe comes across as arrogant or they don't have any stories they can tell about how they've pivoted or listened to their customers or took in feedback, um, if they're going to be kind of bullheaded, you can't really, I mean, you've already experienced this, right? Where like you have to make pivots really quickly. And if you're not able to do that and kind of let go of some of the assumptions that you made about your product or about your customers, it's going to be a really difficult journey. I don't even remember your question now. What was your question?
Yeah, what traits makes a founder worth investing in?
So I guess that kind of just goes back to coachability. And someone has to be really passionate about the problem they're solving, because a startup is a long journey and it's not an easy journey. There's always going to be ups and downs. And if that person's not committed and really mission driven to whatever problem they're solving, they're likely going to bail at some point. So investors or advisors, whoever it is, are looking for someone who is going to be there for the long haul.
What stage are the the companies typically in when applying for accelerators?
I mean, it depends on the accelerator, but typically it's pre-seed or seed range.
Can you explain that for people who might not understand what that means?
I mean, pre-seed is usually means you haven't taken on any money at all. So it'd be like your first fundraising round is typically a bit smaller. Maybe it's friends and family or some angel investors. And then when you go on to raise your seed round, that'll be a little bit larger. Let's say $1 million versus your pre-seed might, and this varies so much across industry and company, but let's say your pre-seed is $300,000, your seed might be $1 million, and then you're raising from actual venture capital firms. But there's a lot of variability in what those mean too and the amounts.
Okay, so if I am a very new founder and I say I have this idea, I've been developing it myself, but I don't know if I want to continue operating or if I want to spend my time putting a deck together, making connections in the investment community, and raising money, how should I evaluate myself to determine which track I go from the founder side? And then from the VC side, would you evaluate that decision differently than a founder would?
I guess, what do you mean by which track to go
Should
on?
I bootstrap it all the way until I operate or sell it off, or should I try to raise money? Are there
Mm.
different types of companies where this type of company just should never try, or how do you think about that?
Yeah, so I mean, for one thing, the market has to be big enough. So you have to be able to prove to yourself and the investor that if they invest money in you, they're going to get a really big return on that money. Some businesses aren't modeled that way. So if you're a small brick and mortar business or what we call like a lifestyle company, those can still be profitable and amazing businesses, but they're not a good fit for venture capital, which um, they're each time you raise like pre-seed, seed, series A, they're looking for you to grow your company 3 to 5 times between each round. So if you think of most businesses you're familiar with, that's not even feasible or what they're after. But if you think about like Airbnb or Uber or companies like that, where their expansion goes nationwide, global, quickly, that's what VCs are after.
Okay, thank you. At the very beginning stages, say somebody decides to go venture route, accelerator, and beyond, how the heck do you even give a good number? What are you looking for in a breakdown to justify a raise?
Well, it depends so much on the industry and it depends on the venture capital firm. So they all have their own math that they're doing with their funds. And you can talk to them directly about that. Like if you're just uh, meeting up for questions, you're not necessarily even like raising from them. You can say like, what sort of returns are you looking for in your fund, or where are you at in your fund cycle to know if they're even like cutting checks at this point. But the math that they're doing is different for each VC firm based on their goals and how much they've raised and what year they're on in their fund. I don't know if that answered your question, but it's a lot of depends. But I think again, like the more people you talk to, it's so hard to figure this out on your own. So the more people that you bring in that are experienced in the space in the industry, they're going to be able to give you advice, like if you're on the right track or you want to go a different path.
So earlier you had mentioned that traction is something that is looked for companies looking to apply to an accelerator. Is that only in the form of money? Is it in form of leads? What does that kind of look like for somebody who's pre-revenue?
Yeah, so revenue is the thing that speaks the loudest and is the best kind of traction if you're able to get it, but that is really really hard to do, especially when you're in the early stages. So another thing that sorry, I just got really distracted by that dog's leg up in the air. The other thing um, that people will look at and consider as traction is users or followers. So if you're even like pre-product and you can get people on a wait list, or if you're an app and you're just having people use your product, even like all of that is considered traction because eventually it could also turn into revenue. But if you're getting any sort of non-dilutive funding, like grants, or you have an IP, you have a patent that maybe you just got awarded, all of that is considered traction. Basically, like you're moving towards your goal and you're not static. So there's a lot of different things that you can pre-revenue kind of talk about and be like, we're moving. Like, I know I don't know if you want to talk about yourselves, but like even you guys being on podcasts and being featured in some of these spaces, that's not revenue, but it's traction.
Yeah, like one step in front of the other to get to revenue. Like, are they making the effort? And is there some sort of evidence to show that they're making the effort to get there? Type of thing.
Yes.
Okay.
Like, for example, also you guys, you like a year ago said we have an idea. 9 months later, you had a product, right? Like an MVP, which is super fast. But that's traction, even though that's not necessarily revenue, but you're further along in your journey and proving that you're doing
Okay.
doing the things.
Doing the thing. Yeah, that was definitely our method. One question I have. Our method was we do the things. We're putting one step in front of the other. If we're working in a zero knowledge environment, all we're saying is what's the next best thing that we think is right to do. And we do that thing. Even if it's wrong, we know one thing wrong to do, so we just do the next best thing. With you seeing the volume of companies that you've seen, do you have any advice for maybe someone who is pre-revenue and they feel like they're kind of floundering in terms of like, how do I make forward progress? Do you have best practices in the very early stages?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind, and one of the common thing that happens with founders is they'll wait too long to put their product out. So they think that it needs to be perfected before they're getting it in the hands of users, even if it's for free. So we always really encourage founders when they're in their alpha and their beta to you should be like a little bit embarrassed of what you're putting out there. If you're not embarrassed, that means you waited too long. So because you want to develop with your customers, right? And so what I see is sometimes someone hasn't gotten traction in the traditional, ways that we're talking about because they've been so focused on building the product and not getting feedback in users. I don't know if that answered your question, but okay.
Right now, it seems like there's a big AI wave. Do a lot of accelerators take companies based on their niche or their industry? Is it always changing? Will it change next season? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the accelerator. But I've heard some people say that if everyone's already heard about it, it's already too late. At least in terms of venture capital, because it's some of those really early companies that are creating something, let's say in the AI world, where it's people don't understand it yet. Those are likely going to be like the unicorn companies because they're so early. So not saying that like AI is not going to be a part of successful growth in companies moving forward. But I do think it's already become a little bit, oh, another AI company. It's gotten a little saturated, and so it's rather than being like a hot word, and I'm saying at least from my perspective, I dig in a little bit more on what that actually means, and are you just using it to get attention, or are you actually doing something innovative in artificial intelligence?
On the investment topics, when the generator is looking at selecting companies for both its accelerator programs and its pre-accelerator programs, what's your thesis, and are they different from program to program?
Yeah, so we do have some programs that are industry specific, and then the one that I'm with is industry agnostic. So it is kind of going back to what I mentioned earlier, the three big buckets or whatever that we look at is the founding team, traction, and market opportunity. Um, the fourth thing that's important is, can we actually help them? We want to, our goal is to be very founder focused, and we don't want to take someone through our program just because they might be great. But if there's not anything direct that we could offer them and really help accelerate them, we don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. So that's another important factor.
When you guys look at potential mentors for the program, are they are most of the people within the ecosystem of Generator, or are they just companies that you've worked with in the past? Are they general people in the community?
Yeah, I would say a lot of it is people in the community. That's who we go to first, partially because you'll be able to like actually make really like in-person relationships with them, and be able to continue versus that one small mentor meeting that you have with them. Since you live in the same city, they're more likely to be bigger fans and continue to meet with you and be your champions. But then we also pull from our national network of investors and mentors. And um, a lot of the ones that will be specific to the company will happen after the program. So we introduce, you all met 30 mentors. In the investment accelerator, it's 70 plus mentors. But then we also curate like individual introductions for the company after the program as well.
What does the general course of both programs look like? We know that because we've been through it, but what if we're like, we rewind 2 months and we're just starting it? What can we expect in a pre-accelerator or an accelerator?
Yeah, so one is just going to be mapping out what your metrics are and your goals. And then part of our job is to just hold you accountable. So we kind of did that in our weekly meetings. Like, did you meet the goals that you set out to? Did you over meet those goals? That means we probably need to make a harder one. And really dialing in on what your KPIs are, what you should be measuring. What you measure matters, right? And then just some really basic things. We make sure your executive summary is up to date, your pitch deck is good to go, and basically making you as attractive as possible to investors and customers. And then, of course, growth. All of that leads back to growth.
So you touched a little bit about the KPIs and what you look for within the program. Are these KPIs the same for every company that goes through the program, or is it dependent on what the company is trying to achieve?
Yeah, exactly. So it's really dependent on the company, where they're at, and um, what makes sense for them to measure.
So right now we are doing this interview in the beautiful state capital of the state of Nevada. Generator operates locally, co-investing with the regions that they're within. So you as a generator operator in Northern Nevada, what do you see here in terms of industry trends, talent, general entrepreneurial ecosystem?
Hmm. Well, one thing I would say is I've been thoroughly impressed by Northern Nevada and the sense of community. And I don't know, maybe you all as actual founders could speak to that, but I feel like this area really wants to see, I know entrepreneurs, I don't like the word, but likes to see founders and companies thrive. And so I've just seen so many people willing to um, do things for free and help out companies, and that's been really inspiring. And I think that we're a small enough community that that's really possible. But we're getting a lot of spillover from and talent from the Bay Area as well, which is kind of bolstering the talent and access to capital in the area. But as far as industry trends, I would say battery tech is definitely something that's on the horizon. We have lithium loop. I don't know if you've heard of lithium loop in Northern Nevada, but basically we have access to mining, processing, and recycling lithium all in one area, which I don't think anyone else in the globe has that. So we just got a $20 million federal funds that was awarded to the area. So there's going to be a lot of investment in that area and continuing to attract battery technology like we have Tesla, Dragonfly Energy, Redwood Materials. Am I forgetting any? I don't know. But anyway, so I do see that. Yeah, Panasonic. So I do see that as something that we may end up specializing in this area.
So here in Northern Nevada, there seems to be a lot of push, like you said, for entrepreneurs and companies growing. There are a lot of events for people to get involved in as far as Northern Nevada to either learn about starting up companies or founding companies or who they can get in contact with in the area.
Yeah, I think that there's a couple that come to mind. There's Launch Reno, and it used to be called Tech Rally, but it's sort of blossomed into something that's just for any builders or people that are, starting their own companies in the area, and that's been a really great networking opportunity. And through the Economic Development Authority of Western Nevada, or EDON, there is Elevate Reno, which is a quarterly pitch competition. Which I think is it kind of replaces 1 million cups if you're familiar with 1 million cups we used to have in the area. So you can kind of showcase what you're working on. What else is there?
Reno Startup Week.
Reno Startup Week. How could I forget? Austin and I are on the committee. So for Reno Startup Week, we had the first one last year. The second one is coming up in September, and it's a week-long event full of workshops and networking and also all things surrounding entrepreneurs and business.
For those of you who don't know, this is really where we kicked off our startup journey in Reno, Carson City area. Was Reno Startup Week last year, and it made a huge impact and really gave us direction and propulsion to help get us where we are today and get through the gBETA program. We were lucky enough to be one of the first companies in that cohort. So it's really helped pay dividends as far as launching us into the ether.
Do you want me to brag about you guys? No.
By all means, go ahead.
So the gBETA program, we only accept 5 companies. We keep our cohorts really small so that we can have a lot of time with each company. So it was really competitive. We had just really fantastic talent and people in the area that applied, and SLEKE was one of the companies accepted. And one of the reasons, that it was a committee that decided, but for me personally, one of the things that stood out was I met with you all a year ago, and you were in the idea phase, and then 9 months later, you're like, "Hey, we have it done. We have our product. We have our MVP," and that was super impressive. Second, you listened to the feedback that myself and the managing director were able to give, and you kind of ran with it. So it said that you were, coachable, you were listening, and you're building fast. Third, y'all are really mission driven. And already from that early stage, I saw that you were connecting with your customers or, like future customers, which is so important. Sometimes people build in a box and build in a silo. And then when they put it out to the world, it turns out that it's not exactly what anyone wants to buy. So you being so customer focused and being involved in all these different communities where your people are is really important. So anyway, hats off to you.
So yeah, we applied to Generator, the full accelerator, last year, and we applied again this way for the pre-accelerator. Did applying before, is that common for companies to apply multiple times? Was it, obviously not a deal breaker if we were able to still get in, but is that something that's a determining factor whether we get in or not in if we apply again?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I take notice of companies who are consistently applying. It's not common to get in your first time, right? Like a lot of companies will apply multiple times before they, successfully get into an accelerator or a program. It's just like fundraising. It's it's a lot. So I do encourage companies to apply, even if they don't think they're going to get in, because for me myself, I will go back and look at their application from the previous year or whatever it is and see what progress they've made. And again, it's relationship building too. Like, you'll get to know those managing directors. They'll see that you're eager and that you're coachable, and even if you're sending them like every 6 months, like sending them a little update, hey, we're really excited, we just have this great news, like all of that speaks a lot to the founders and helps your chances.
What can companies expect after an accelerator?
So if one thing I would look for when choosing an accelerator um, is those that continue to stay involved with you even after the program, especially if they are on your cap table. So, anytime you're adding a investor, you're hoping that it'll be a good value add, not just the money bringing in, but the person that's attached to that money. So look for, good partners in your accelerator program that will continue to support you even after the program. Because it's mutually beneficial. If they've invested in you, they want you to succeed. So it should be that two-way street.
Yeah, that's all I got.
Jay Halls, thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for coming out and talking with us. Everyone, go look into Generator, look at the gBETA program if your city has it. It is a huge benefit to your company and just helping put on the rocket boosters. It's night and day difference of how much information we learn throughout the program. The mentors are awesome. Even the investors are awesome. And the staff of Generators is also fantastic. So get on out there, build something cool.
Thank you for having me.
Peace.